It's a strange feeling, realizing you've begun to wilt without even noticing. I'm 37, but some mornings I catch my reflection and see a woman decades older, someone worn thin by repetition and unmet hopes. I work as a manager at a mid-tier firm, a job that once gave me purpose, now just a title I recite when people ask. Somewhere along the way, my life dulled. The days lost their color. My routines became cages, and I stopped trying. I used to care. I used to get my nails done, try new shades of lipstick, flirt with the idea that love could still surprise me. But now I dress in clothes that camouflage, not captivate. I smile just enough to keep questions at bay. Deep down, I know what's missing. I've known for a while. Love. Not the fleeting kind, not the Saturday night and see you never sort of affection. I want the mundane intimacy of someone who knows how I take my tea and notices when I've had a hard day. I want dinners at home, soft arguments over which movie to watch, a life that's shared, not just survived. Then, last Thursday, my phone rang. It was my older sister, Clara, her voice bright as ever. "It's my 40th, she announced before I could say hello. "We're doing a dinner at that place I love, the one with the mural of flowers on the wall. You're coming. No excuses." I blinked at the calendar. Had it really been that long since I last saw her? "Of course," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I wouldn't miss it." She added that they'd love for me to stay the night. "Jordan asked if you'd be there," she said casually. "He always says you're his favorite adult." That part made me smile. Jordan, 18 now, taller than I remember, wiser than most boys his age, at least when I last saw him. We used to be close in that distant familial way, aunt and nephew, mentor and mischievous teen. He always looked up to me, called me Aunt Lila with a little smirk like we were in on some shared joke. I used to think of him as a kid who needed guidance. But he's not a kid anymore. I found myself lingering on that thought longer than I should have. That night, I stood in front of my mirror, scrutinizing the contents of my wardrobe. Everything felt wrong. Too formal, too plain, too much fabric or not enough. I hadn't dressed to impress in years. But this felt different. I wanted to look not just good. I wanted to feel seen. Stylish, yes. Elegant. Maybe even magnetic. Something modern and fresh. Nothing overly done. A dress that hugged where it mattered but didn't scream for attention. I finally settled on a deep forest green wrap dress I hadn't worn in ages. It made my waist look defined, and my skin just a little warmer. Paired with simple gold hoops and a dark coat, I felt like someone I used to be. I packed a bag for the overnight stay, tossed in a book I'd probably ignore, and tried not to let my thoughts drift back to Jordan. But they did. It wasn't anything inappropriate, just curiosity. What does he look like now? Does he still laugh with that boyish grin? Does he still talk to me like I'm the only adult in the room who actually listens? The train ride was uneventful. I spent it watching the countryside rush by and letting the familiar ache settle in my chest. The ache of anticipation mixed with guilt for letting life drift, for giving up too easily. Clara met me at the station with her usual flurry of hugs and stories. "You look amazing," she said, and I flushed because I didn't expect the compliment to mean so much. When we pulled up to their house, I saw him. Jordan. He was on the porch, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in. He looked up when he heard the car door, and for a moment, his face lit up in recognition. The way his lips curved, the way he stood, taller now, broader in the shoulders, his hair just long enough to fall into his eyes. He wasn't a boy anymore. "Hey, Aunt Lila," he said, his voice deeper, smoother. "Jordan," I replied, hugging him quickly, trying not to let him notice the way my heart raced at his nearness. "You've grown." He grinned. "You always say that." Clara laughed behind me. "She's right, though. He's been eating everything in the house." We shared a dinner that night at the restaurant, full of laughter, clinking glasses, and shared stories. Jordan sat across from me, and more than once, I caught him watching me quietly, as if he was seeing me for the first time too. That night, when we got back to the house, Clara went upstairs first, leaving me in the kitchen to make tea. Jordan came in a minute later. "You really do look different," he said, leaning against the counter. I turned, caught off guard. "Different good or different bad?" "Good," he said simply. "Really good." I wasn't sure what to say to that, so I handed him a cup of tea. And in the silence between us, something unspoken stirred. Not wrong, but unexpected. Not desire, at least not yet, but awareness. The night stretched long ahead of us. And somehow, for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The house was winding down, lights dimming one by one. Clara had gone to bed not long after we returned, and the stillness settled over everything like a blanket. I stood in the guest room brushing my hair, telling myself not to read into anything. I wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. My thoughts were too loud. The night outside called to me like it used to when I was younger, before I stopped listening to the small, reckless parts of myself. Then I heard it. A gentle knock on the doorframe. Jordan. He leaned casually against the wood, arms crossed, his silhouette haloed by the warm hallway light. He held a folded blanket under one arm and a small pack of cigarettes in his hand. The very sight of him made something flutter in my stomach, something I hadn't felt in far too long. "Hey," he said, his voice low, a conspiratorial smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Come outside with me." I blinked. "Outside?" "Yeah," he said. "Backyard. It's clear tonight. Stars are out." I hesitated for a second too long. He stepped in and handed me the blanket. "Come on." "Just for a bit." The cold met us as we stepped into the yard, sharp but not unwelcome. He led me to the far end where the porch light didn't reach, just grass and shadow and sky. He spread the blanket on the cool ground and lay down, patting the space beside him without looking at me. I followed. For a long moment we said nothing. Above us stretched a sky so wide and open, I forgot how to breathe. The stars were brilliant and steady, unbothered by the weight of human things, regret, longing, uncertainty. Lying next to Jordan, our arms nearly touching, I suddenly felt like a girl again. Like the night might still surprise me. He lit a cigarette with a flick of his lighter, the flame briefly illuminating his face. When he took a drag and passed it to me, I hesitated only a heartbeat before pressing it to my lips. We shared it, passing it back and forth in silence, watching the smoke curl upward into the sky. "Do you do this often?" I asked quietly. He exhaled slowly. "Only when I can't sleep. Or when something's on my mind." "What's on your mind tonight?" He turned his head toward me. I could feel the weight of his gaze, even in the dark. "You," he said simply. I laughed, softly. It was easier to pretend it didn't make my heart stutter. "Me? You seem different," he said. "Not in a bad way. Just softer. Like you're letting yourself feel things again." I turned my head to face him. He wasn't teasing. His expression was thoughtful, serious, in a way that startled me. "You always looked at me like a kid," he continued. "But I'm not a kid anymore." "I know," I said, almost a whisper. And I did. Lying next to him, the scent of smoke and the cold air between us, I saw him fully now, not as the nephew I used to correct and guide, but as a young man with a voice that lingered and hands that no longer fidgeted nervously when he spoke. "You always looked up to me," I said, barely louder than the wind. "I still do," he replied. "But it's different now." We let the silence fall again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of something unnamed, stretching out like the sky above us, immense, quiet, and shimmering with possibilities neither of us dared speak aloud. Our fingers brushed, just slightly, not by accident. And still, I didn't move. I don't know how long we lay there, speaking little, sharing the cold and the smoke and the stars. But I knew, as I finally rose to my feet and followed him silently back inside, that something had shifted irreversibly. I couldn't see him as a boy anymore. And worse, better, I didn't want to. I changed into my black silk robe, the one I rarely wore, saved for nights when I wanted to feel something other than invisible. It slid over my skin like water, cool and fluid, reminding me that I still had softness to offer the world. But the moment I lay in bed, stillness swallowed me again. My thoughts refused to quiet. Jordan, the way he looked at me under the stars, the slow-burning focus in his eyes, the unguarded honesty of his words. It echoed in my head, looping with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I stared at the ceiling, watched the pale moonlight creep across the ceiling, and knew that tonight, sleep would not find me. Then my phone buzzed. One soft vibration on the mattress beside me. I picked it up, expecting it to be some spam notification or a message from Clara about something she forgot to say. But no, it was from Jordan. "If you like to eat at night like me, come to the kitchen." Just that. A line so casual it made me smile. I slipped out of bed without thinking, feet bare on the cool wooden floor. The house was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint shuffle of movement coming from downstairs. I padded through the hallway and down the stairs, clutching the edge of my robe with one hand. The kitchen light was on. And there he was. Jordan stood at the stove in nothing but a loose t-shirt and drawstring pajama pants that hung low on his hips. He was leaning casually, one hand on the counter, the other expertly flipping a waffle on the griddle. The scent of sugar and warm batter filled the air, and on the island beside him sat a bowl of freshly sliced strawberries and a can of whipped cream. "You actually came," he said without turning around. "You invited me," I replied, settling into one of the bar stools. "Fair," he said, flashing me a grin over his shoulder. I couldn't sleep either. He finished plating the waffles with a little flourish like a proud chef and turned toward me. With boyish enthusiasm, he popped the whipped cream can and tipped it back, spraying a puff of cream into his mouth before smirking at me. "Want some?" I opened my mouth to reply, but he was already stepping closer. Slowly. His movements deliberate, eyes locked on mine. Without asking again, he raised the can, leaned in, and gently squirted a swirl of cream between my parted lips. I blinked, stunned by the sweetness, by the intimacy, by the look in his eyes, completely unguarded. Then his hand brushed against my cheek, barely a touch, but enough to make me forget the taste of cream and sugar. "I've been trying not to say this," he said, voice low. "But tonight, under the stars, lying next to you, I couldn't pretend anymore." My breath caught in my throat. "Jordan." "I know," he cut in. "We're not supposed to. I'm your nephew. You're supposed to see me as a boy who used to chase frogs in the yard. But you don't. Not anymore. And I don't see you as my aunt. I haven't in a long time." He stood close now, so close that the air between us felt charged and tender. I should have stopped it, should have drawn a line, reminded us both of the rules. But I didn't move. He reached out, not to pull me in, but to offer something, himself. His feelings. His quiet confession. Everything that had lingered between us unspoken was now resting in the space of that gaze. "You're not alone," he whispered. "Not when I'm around. I see you." The words hit something in me that had long been neglected. Something soft. Something yearning. I didn't speak. I couldn't, but I didn't pull away either. That night, we got closer than we should have. Not with actions, but with truths. With the kind of closeness that makes the world fade and makes everything forbidden feel painfully, undeniably real. And as I lay in bed afterward, still tasting the cream, still feeling the press of his presence, I knew nothing could ever be the same. The morning arrived too quickly, slipping beneath the door like a whisper, brushing the edges of my dreams with its pale light. I lay still in bed, my robe tangled around my legs, the scent of sugar and strawberries still clinging faintly to my skin. My phone sat silent on the nightstand, but I didn't need a message to know everything had changed. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he looked at me while saying it. The kitchen felt like another world now, soft-lit and suspended in a place where rules no longer applied. And yet, the world beyond the walls was still intact. There were expectations, roles, boundaries that hadn't disappeared just because the stars were watching. Still, I didn't regret going downstairs. I couldn't. When I finally rose, I wrapped myself tighter in my robe and padded into the hallway. The scent of brewed coffee drifted up from the kitchen again, mingled with something toasted. For a moment, I stood at the top of the stairs, wondering if I should pretend nothing happened. But my body moved before my doubt could catch up. He was already there. Jordan stood by the window, sunlight catching in the soft brown waves of his hair. He wore a hoodie now, hands tucked into the sleeves like he was trying to seem smaller, more harmless than the person who had looked into my soul just hours before. He turned at the sound of my steps. His eyes found mine, and everything between us returned in a quiet instant. "Morning," he said, his voice careful, like he wasn't sure what I needed it to be. I nodded. "Morning." He gestured to the counter. "Made eggs. Toast too." I didn't want to, make it weird. "It's not weird." I lied gently, sitting down. "We just talked." His mouth quirked into a half-smile. "Is that what we're calling it?" I smiled too, despite myself. "It was late. We couldn't sleep. That's all." He nodded, but the air between us said otherwise. He passed me a plate, and I tried to focus on the food. I tried to ignore the way he leaned against the counter, arms crossed like he was trying to hold himself back from saying more. Finally, he spoke. "I wasn't trying to put pressure on you last night. I've been carrying that for a while." His voice was soft, but sure. "Seeing you again, like this, it reminded me why I looked up to you so much. Why I still do." The toast in my hand grew heavy. "I always thought you were out of reach," he continued. "You were strong, beautiful, confident. Someone with answers. But last night, when I saw you lying next to me, laughing at the stars and sharing a cigarette, I realized you're human too." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't, because he was right. I had tried so hard to be untouchable, to be the adult, the guide, the one who didn't falter. But in the dark, beneath the sky, I had let something slip, and it felt more honest than anything I'd said in years. "You saw me," I said at last, quietly. His gaze softened. "Yeah." "And I saw you," I added, meeting his eyes. "And maybe that's what scares me the most." He didn't smile. He just nodded, slowly, as if acknowledging a truth that neither of us wanted to say aloud. We ate in silence after that. Not cold, not distant, but charged with the quiet awareness of people who had stood too close to a boundary and felt it move under their feet. That day was filled with distractions, Clara bustling about with plans for lunch, errands to run, small talk about music and new shows. Jordan and I exchanged glances when no one was looking, a silent thread that tugged between us. But every time our eyes met, I remembered that moment in the kitchen. The sweet, forbidden taste of closeness. The truth he laid bare. And the new, dangerous fact I could no longer deny. Part of me wanted to keep walking into that night with him, even knowing where it might lead. The day blurred by, a polite haze of family laughter and warm meals. Clara was in her element, flitting between stories and desserts, insisting we all stay one more night, so she could make brunch in the morning. I nodded along, pretending that everything inside me wasn't quietly unraveling every time Jordan entered a room. We were careful, too careful. We kept our distance, our voices neutral, our expressions unreadable. But the memory of whipped cream and soft confessions still lingered between us like smoke, no longer burning, but impossible to ignore. Later that evening, after the sun had set and the house dipped into that familiar silence, I found myself alone in the living room. The others had drifted off to their rooms, doors closed, lights dimmed. I stood by the window, arms folded tightly, staring out into the yard where it all began just the night before. I didn't hear his footsteps, but I felt him. Jordan appeared behind me, quiet as a shadow. "You always get this still when you're thinking," he said, his voice low. I turned, startled, and there he was again, no mask, no guarded distance, just him. His hair slightly tousled, eyes a little too intense, standing far too close for anything to feel safe anymore. I was trying not to, I admitted. His brow lifted. Trying not to think about last night? Trying not to want to. He stepped forward, slow, like I might break. "Then don't try," he whispered. There were so many things I could have said, should have said. But the words slipped away, irrelevant beneath the weight of what was happening. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But suddenly our faces were close. Too close. And then it happened. Accidental. Inescapable. Our lips brushed. A breath. A pause. Then again, this time longer, deeper. His hand came up, fingers grazing my cheek, unsure and trembling. I gasped against his mouth, the silk of my robe catching between us. His warmth was overwhelming, real in a way that made the room disappear. I pulled back first, heart racing, chest tight. He looked at me, startled, like he hadn't meant for it to go that far. He started, but I pressed a finger gently to his lips. "We can't," I whispered. But my voice lacked conviction. And his eyes, oh, his eyes, they didn't ask for permission. They begged for truth. "We already did," he said. I stood frozen for a long moment, hearing the echo of his heartbeat in mine. I wanted to speak, to explain, to rationalize everything away. But all I could do was hold his gaze and feel the remnants of his kiss burning on my mouth like a brand. Then, slowly, I stepped back. "I need air," I said, even though we were surrounded by it. He didn't stop me. He let me go. But as I walked away, I knew there would be no going back. The kiss was no accident. It was the beginning, and the end of pretending.